Hello students, myself Maitri Dave and today we are going to discuss about pointing. So let us start our today's session. Let me give you introduction of pointing first. So pointing is the finishing of mortar joints in the brick or stone masonry construction. And here we can say pointing is the implementing of joints to be a depth of 10 mm to 20 mm and filled it with better quality mortar in desired shape. It is done for cement mortar and lime mortar joints. So, what is the purpose of pointing actually, right? That question arises in our mind. So, here you understand the concept of pointing from this image, but the purpose is something which is very important. So, the pointing work not only protects the mortar joints from the adverse effect of the atmosphere, but also improves the appearance of the wall by providing the pattern of the joint, their thicknesses, color, and texture prominently. In exposed masonry, joints are considered to be the weakest and the most vulnerable spots from which rainwater or dampness can enter. So to resist this pointing is most important, right? So these are the purposes which make the process of pointing most important, right? Now, what is the concept of mortar for this particular pointing work? So pointing work is usually done by lime mortar or the cement mortar. So when I talk about the lime mortar, which is of 1 gem 2, it means the one portion of fat lime and 2 times the sand or the surki we use. When I talk about the cement mortar, which is of 1 gem 3, it means the one portion of the cement and the 3 times the sand we mix together. So the mortar for lime pointing is made with the fat lime by grinding it with the sand or surki in a mortar mill. Now let me give you idea about some of the preparation of surface for the pointing. So when I talk about the new work, all the joints are racked down to a depth of 20 mm while the mortar is still soft and the surface and the joints are then cleaned and thoroughly wetted. But when I talk about the old work, all the pointing and the superfluous material on the surface and in the joints are removed. The joints and the surface are cleaned and then thoroughly wetted. So that is how we prepare for pointing. Now what are the methods of pointing? So after preparing the surface as mentioned above, the mortar is carefully placed in joints using a small trowel. The placed mortar should be of desired shape. Whenever the fresh mortar is placed in the joints, it should be pressed hardly to gain strong bond with old interior mortar. The pointed surface is kept wet for at least a week or till it sets after application. So now let me give you idea about different types of pointing first. So here the first type is the flush pointing, then the recessed pointing, the third one is the rubbed, orchid or groove pointing, fourth one is the bedded pointing, fifth one is the struck pointing, sixth one is the tuck pointing, seventh one is the V pointing, and lastly the weathered pointing. So let us understand all these types in detail. So let us start with the first one, which is flush pointing. So in this type, mortar is pressed hard in the racked joint and by finishing off flush with the edges of masonry units. The edges are neatly trimmed with trowel and straight edges. It does not give good appearance, but flush pointing is more durable because of resisting the provision of space for dust and water. Due to this reason, this method is extensively used, right? So here you can get a clear idea of flush pointing from this image. Now let us move to the second type, which is recessed pointing. So in this case, mortar is pressing back by 5 mm or more from the edges. During placing of mortar, the face of pointing is kept vertical by a suitable tool. So this type gives very good appearance. So here you can get a clear idea of this recessed pointing from this image. Now let us move to the third type, which is rubbed, keyed or groove pointing. So this is the modification of flush pointing in which groove is formed at mid-height by pointing to. It gives good appearance. So here you can see one groove is there in this pointing work. From this image you can get the idea. Now the next one is the fourth one, which is welded pointing. So here it is formed by a steel or iron with a concave edge. So it gives good appearance, but it will damage easily when compared to the other type because it is the exposed one. So that is how this welded pointing construction look like from this image. Now let us move to the fifth one, which is struck pointing. So this is the modification of flush pointing in which the face, the pointing is inclined and with its upper edge pressed inside the face by 10 mm, which is drains water easily. Here you can see the inclination, which is the struck pointing for simple clearation of the water. Now let us move to the sixth one, which is tuck pointing. So in this case, mortar is pressed in the racked joint first and finishing flush with the face. While the pressed mortar is green, groove or narrow channel is cut in the center of groove, which is having 5 mm width and 3 mm depth. This groove is then filled with white cement putty, kept projecting beyond the face of the joint by 3 mm. If projection is done in mortar, it is called the bastard pointing or the half tuck pointing as shown in this figure. Now the seventh one is the V pointing. So here V pointing are similar to the keyed pointing work. The mortar filled and pressed in a joint. After that, the V-shaped groove is formed in the joint by the use of V-shaped tool as shown in this figure. Now the last one, which is the weathered pointing. So this is made by making a projection in the form of V shape as shown in this figure. So we have completed all different types of pointing here. I hope you understand all the topics that we covered and discussed in today's lecture of pointing. So thank you for watching. See you soon in the next lecture.